Welcome to Culture Talks. I'm your informational guide today, Sarah, and behind the scenes I got with me Rebecca, Cass, and Rosemary. We recently were asked about how language is an influential part of culture, and we wanted to take time to discuss this. To our professor who asked the question, "What up?" And to our class, if you are listening in, welcome. Today we will be discussing language and the correlation it holds within culture, specifically in Navajo or Dine culture. According to Webster's dictionary, language is defined as words pronounced in specific ways that are combined, used, and understood within a community. Language explains a lot about the cultures that use them because languages represent cultures speaking through individual voices. When we read between the lines within a language, we move past seeing the words as mere scribbles on a page and start to see the deeper relationship between culture and language. Language influences the way people think, the way interactions take place, and the diversity of the world. This diversity makes it desirable to preserve aspects of language. But why? Well, that's what we're here to discuss within our favorite culture, Navajo. Roughly 150,000 Navajos speak an Apache language that was not written until the 19th century. It consists of 4 vowels that have different meanings depending on if they are short or long and nasalized. The consonants also have multiple forms. They can be plain, aspirated, an affricate, or an ejective stop. Aspirated is when a letter is pronounced with a puff of air upon release, and an ejective stop is when air pressure is raised with a noticeable puff of air. All sounds that are made also use high, low, rising, and falling tones. The different tones distinguish words that may look alike from one another. These tones and variations are so complicated because the language did not start out as a written language, and it is still not taught that way. It is traditionally learned through ear, as Navajo families speak Dene language in their homes, allowing the language to thrive across generations. Context is also an important part of understanding their language. Verbs have additional forms where they can be given tenses for past, future, and present scenarios. However, time is not a huge part of their language, so these forms are rarely used. This makes verbs difficult to understand for English speakers and people of other cultures. Because their language is not time sensitive, their culture is very relaxed. It does not matter when something happened, it only matters that it did happen. Nonverbal cues are also an integral part of their language. During conversation, they pause to perceive their own thoughts and allow another person to contribute their ideas. This shows respect for the people with which they are conversing and allows them to develop a better sense of their responses. Because their focus is centered on the world around them, taking the time to mull over their thoughts and form ideas is a traditional part of their culture. Raising their eyebrows and pointing with their lips are also examples of nonverbal cues that are used in Navajo culture. These cues were used in earlier centuries when they had to communicate quietly over large distances in hunting. Now, this may seem strange to people outside their culture, but it is a significant part of their community. Verbal cues that are used within their culture are often poetic and humorous. Having a sense of sarcasm has been built into their culture, and often you will see Navajos laughing within their conversations. For a child who is born, the first laugh is a significant part of their development because it expresses a very deeply rooted personality trait they want in their culture. Happiness and peace is something that should be seen throughout the tribes, and laughter shows this. Their language does not have words for everything, but slang terms are used for deeper messages to get across behind common words. Outside the Navajo culture, these words may lose their values through the translation process. Boyfriend, for example, is in Navajo, which they translate to mean the one who sticks up from their armpit. This phrase describes the closeness of a relationship, and it is not a phrase that is tossed around, but rather one that holds meaning in explaining the level of intimacy between two people.
Na ne shore.
Is another slang term that means to go on a date in English, but in the Navajo language it means I'm going to drag you around. The literal translation may seem strange, but in their culture it is an affectionate way of showing their significant other they want to spend time with them.
Ja'i.
Is another word with different meanings. In English, it explains someone who does not choose to listen, while it translates to one without ears in Navajo. This phrase may be used to chastise children who are not paying attention.
Torbilla de Jol.
Is the last idiom we will talk about. It translates to all thumbs up in English, but in Navajo it means to be clumsy and awkward, so thumbs up to that. Phrases such as these allow them to express meanings that do not have words in their language. In Navajo culture, language is more than just the correct pronunciation of words. Their language has very deep roots in their culture. Though English is still an important language for Navajos to know, their home language brings with them a culture that will never be forgotten. Children who refuse to learn their language are referred to as apples, which represents how though they may seem native on the outside, the culture does not carry through on the inside. Being true to their culture means that language flows through their veins because language, simply put, gives them their Navajo-ness and sense of identity. Language needs to be preserved and passed down because of this deep sense of identity, life, and culture. Poetic stories and phrases are passed down from generation to generation in order to pass on a heritage with them. Songs are ways for them to express their inner selves. However, not every single conversation held with a Navajo is developed from poetry, song, or humor. When introducing themselves, they take time to mention their clans from both their maternal and paternal sides. Because their culture is developed from several clans that connect through family, they may more easily develop relationships within their communities. Family is a high value, so to be considered brothers or sisters to one another explains important relationships. If someone refers to someone as a sister, brother, aunt, or uncle, they are setting them apart as family. This is a high honor in Navajo culture. Although Navajo is a very complex language, their uniqueness impacts the world we live in. With the struggling of their language, Navajo culture could be in danger. Fewer people are speaking it now than in past generations. The endangerment of their language presents an issue that must be resolved in order to preserve the precious history of Navajo culture. Their language is special because it does not just bring words to life, it brings their world to life. So this has been Culture Talks, Navajo edition. We hope you leave here feeling more informed about the correlation between culture and language, specifically for Navajos. And maybe the next time you communicate with them, there will be a lot more understanding. Don't be afraid of talking to someone in Navajo culture because maybe they're afraid of talking to you too. Remember, language is a lot more than just boring. Remember, language is a lot more than just boring. Remember, language is a lot more than just boring old. Okay, we're out.